Yeah.
Oh, here we are. Welcome, welcome, students. We'll just give a minute as people are zooming in from the main room. Feel free, students, if you're just joining, if you want to rename yourself with the year that you'll graduate and your concentration, especially if it's not HPAM. And we're so glad that you're here.
Hi everyone, my name is Jada. I'm actually pursuing my undergrad right now at CUNY York, so I don't have a specific concentration, but I am majoring in public health.
Oh, great, Jada, welcome.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, my name is Sidra and my major is health policy and management, and this is my second semester at CUNY. So I think this session is for a health HPAM, right? Or
Yes, this is the breakout room for
okay,
health policy
okay,
management.
okay. Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, and just we'll be getting started. And just so that everybody knows that this event is being recorded for our students and for those that will be jumping in later, and you're also free to move between breakout rooms as well. But I'll go ahead and get started with a big good evening to everyone and a welcome to the What I Did with My Degree panel for the Health Policy and Management breakout room. My name is Tina Lynn and my pronouns are she, her. I am the student career advisor here at CUNY School of Public Health. And tonight we'll hear from public health professionals and CUNY SPH alumni who hold a degree in health policy and management. Before we begin the panel, I want to give context to this degree program at the CUNY School of Public Health. The Masters of Public Health degree in Health Policy and Management prepares students to plan and manage public health programs in a variety of urban settings, analyze the impact of health and non-health policies on population health, and advocate for policies that promote the health of populations. For more information, visit the CUNY SPH website. And tonight's panel will include moderated questions followed by audience Q&A. As a reminder, you're able to move between this breakout room and others at any time. And the chat is also open for any comments and questions you may have. Now, let's hear from our panelists. Each panelist will start by introducing themselves and briefly explain their daily responsibilities and their current roles. We'll start with Jesse, and then second to Ritu, third Nyan, and fourth Hannah. So Jesse, take it away, please.
Great, thanks, Tina. Great to see everyone. My name is Jesse Baumgartner. I graduated from the HPAM program at CUNY SPH the fall of 2020. I started the fall of 2018, so about 2.5 years. I am currently a senior research associate with the Commonwealth Fund, which is a nonprofit foundation that both funds research in health policy as well as conducts internal research on sort of a range of health system issues, sort of with a goal of informing policymakers at both a federal and a local level to sort of push different policies to improve the health system. So I spend a lot of my time doing state health system evaluation as well as health insurance reform. Yeah, it's great to see all of you. Thanks.
Ritu, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ritu Jain. I'm the data and outreach manager for the oral health program at the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. And I graduated with my MPH in health policy spring of 17. from CUNY. So I did my first year at Brooklyn College and then transitioned into the CUNY campus up in Harlem. So currently in my role as a data and outreach manager, we work with vendors across the city to bring dental services to children in schools at no cost. And we collect all the data, and from that have some policy initiatives sent to the state. Yeah, happy to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Nyan Reynolds. I graduated from the School of Public Health in 2017 with a degree 2. I am a former military officer, so when I graduated in 2017, I went right back to active duty. I left the military in 2020, and I'm working at the Department of Homeland Security, Counter Weapons of Mass Destruction's office. My title is Acquisition Management Analyst. A lot of what I do is I look at radiation and nuclear technologies to help safeguard the country's ports, airways, all that fun stuff. So a lot of the programs that I work on, unfortunately, I can't discuss in this briefing, but yeah, it's great being at Homeland Security with as a public health professional, kind of doing something different.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Wade. I got my MPH in 2016, and like the other panelists, I was in health policy and management. I am currently Director of City Affairs and Public Policy at NYU Langone Health. I've worked in the Office of Government and Community Affairs for NYU Langone for 7 years now. So I've had several different positions, but sort of the summary of what I've done on a day-to-day basis is monitoring federal, state, and city legislation or regulations that may impact the health system, good or bad, and helping the health system respond to those issues and managing our relationships with elected officials.
Wow, as you can all see, we've got a stacked panel of alum across a diverse array of applying their MPHs in various ways. And so excited to hear more about that. Jesse, why don't we start with you? Before your current role, you've held various positions in public health field. Which of your past experiences is most memorable for you? And what type of support did you receive at CUNY SPH as you've continued your public health journey?
Sure. Yeah, my resume is a bit of a hodgepodge. It started as a journalist, and then I spent about 8 years, maybe 6 years more in the life sciences field, some working with biotech companies, and then a couple of years at Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, doing kind of more of a business development, like partnering type role for the institution before I moved into the MB-PH program, and then to my current job as a policy researcher. It's a great question. I don't know which is most memorable. I think probably, honestly, the time at Sloan Kettering was really interesting, just to see a big health system from within, as Hannah can probably speak to. I was in a particular part of it, but I did get a lot of exposure to the broader institution, both the research institution and the hospital. And it was really interesting to see kind of how those things work together, some of the tensions, some of the some of the synergies. But probably I would say the most impactful was the time I spent while I was getting my MPH, in which I did a couple of grad research internships, one on the hepatitis surveillance program at DOHMH. And then I also did some time at the same time with the New York State Senate Health Committee chair, kind of analyzing legislation for them and helping them do background research on different bills that they were considering in the committee. So those are probably my most impactful ones, just in terms of showing me kind of what was out there, both from like an implementation side, like Ritu can probably speak to at DOHMH, and then also kind of how things sit on the legislative side, and kind of how those two functions interact together, and kind of how legislation, then gets passed down to the agencies and implemented. I found that really interesting. And then to the last part of your question, Sheena, the SPH was a huge help for me along the way. I think coming out of Sloan Kettering when I took on the MPH program, I really kind of wanted to move outside of the health system and see more of the agency side and the legislative side. Both those internships I found were through CUNY's career services. One was through like a job fair. The other was just through their career board, the one at DOHMH, where I ended up spending most of my time. So in terms of connecting with people, it was a huge help for me there. And then simultaneously through kind of interactions with my classes, my current job actually came from a CUNY professor connecting me to someone, my econ professor. So in a lot of ways, the connections I made during sort of those 3 years while I was at CUNY ended up kind of informing a lot of kind of how I ended up where I currently am.
Wow. So it's like these people connections but also these connections of all these experiences across like health systems, legislative, governmental, and now in philanthropies. I think not hodgepodge, but diversified or cross-functional. I think that's like the next new as well. So thank you for sharing that. Nyan, in addition to your current role, you're also a second-year doctoral student at Liberty University, and you've held leadership positions while serving in the U.S. Army. When did you decide that you wanted to pursue a career in public health? And how has an MPH shaped your career trajectory?
Great question. So, in a sure personal story here. So, mental health in the military is very big. The stigma in mental health is one that not a lot of soldiers are wanting to talk about. And so, in 2014, a good friend of mine had killed himself. Right, he had been in the military for about 15 years at that time, and I thought that we weren't doing enough as soldiers to help those who are suffering from mental health, and I felt one of the best ways to do that was to go back to school and study public health and help spread the message across the military. And so I made that decision in 2014 that I was going to do that, and I enrolled in the program. I finished it in 2 years. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do what exactly I wanted to do in public health. However, I was able to work with RE2, and we were developing a program called Let's Chat Mental Health. So I was able to take a lot of that that we developed and kind of broadcast it to the soldiers, some of the leaders across Fort Bliss out in El Paso, Texas, kind of give a broad overview of mental health in the military and how we can kind of reduce the stigma and help those service members who are suffering immensely from mental health and other health issues across the service.
Thank you for sharing that very personal story and how the problems that we see in this world and gaining that knowledge and applying it to help others. And I think that speaks to a lot of the students that come to CUNY SPH, very mission-minded as well. Hannah, our question for you is, while obtaining your MPH, you've worked for the New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. What other experiences did you gain during that time, and how did you navigate the work-life balance?
That's a great question for me. I took a longer time to do my degree. I can't say exactly how long in my memory, but I think it was 3.5 years. And part of that was because I was doing the program part-time, because I needed to work during the program and I wanted to work, and I was trying to gain more experience in public health in New York City before I graduated, because I really felt like as a student, I was able to access internships and fellowships and little opportunities like that were just a semester to really get my foot in the door, to get exposure to work that I hadn't previously gotten to do in New York. When I graduated from my undergrad, I was looking for work in public health in New York City, and it looked like every job out there required an MPH that I thought would be the perfect fit for me. So that is part of what inspired me to go back to school and to apply to the CUNY program. But I did actually find a job, and I was already working in the field when I started the degree. But by the time I was starting to think about field work, I really needed or I really thought I needed. I really wanted more policy work experience in policy. And so I did a kind of a wild thing and got, quit my job that was wonderful and stable and decided to apply for a number of internships and opportunities and ended up, it worked out. I got an internship in the office that I currently work in and have worked in since finishing school. So it can work out. But I did really everything I could through the CUNY network. And I think that was one of the really excellent parts of the program is how many different research institutes and incredible professors are doing work that's interesting and that they have an opportunity for you to join. I was in the it's the CUNY Health Equity Institute, I think, and I did also an internship with the Center for Healthy Aging in the Hunter. Sorry, I'm saying the names wrong. I have them written down on another piece of paper so I don't mess up the names. The Brookdale Center for Healthy Aging at Hunter College, and the CUNY Institute for Health Equity. And then I also did a research action class that was about food policy that had like a class component as well as a work in the community component. And all those things were really valuable experiences. I cannot say that I did the work-life balance well, but I did the best that I could, and I think it worked out for me. I really tried to take advantage of the CUNY system.
Yeah, and definitely work-life balance is sort of like a dynamic thing, right? But just incredible going to school while working full-time, and just hearing about your experience in taking that calculated risk for your field work, in pursuing those things that you're interested in those topics, and with the CUNY network for support is amazing. Thank you for sharing that. Ritu, what was your experience like as a graduate student at CUNY SPH, and how did your experience prepare you for your current position?
I think I have two things I can share. One, I had somewhat of a unique experience in that I was part of a class that started one campus and went to another campus. In Brooklyn College, we had a lot of resources. We were given, we had a great campus to just start off on. We had a great library, all the resources that we needed. And moving into a new campus, kind of having to start over, readjust to new environment and the new resources that were available was a very unique experience. And I think that the thing that made it the best was, and I'm not sure if it was just for my year specifically, but the people that were in my classes, 9 specifically, we were thick as thieves. We did pretty much every single class together. And because of that, we were able to meet before class, meet after class, work together on projects, make sure everyone was on the same page for exams and papers. And so the camaraderie there was amazing. And it could have just been that we were lucky and that we all wanted to get through everything together. So that was the best thing that could have happened during my MPH.
I love hearing that, especially about that camaraderie and that connection. And I feel like it's a bit of both, like both the luck and also that intentionality to foster those relationships. And so
Definitely.
For all the folks that are, if you see one of your classmates here in this room right now, maybe send them a private chat message just to say hello and to connect and maybe debrief your takeaways.
I'm going to say this. Rachel brought up a great point. I would say, without a good team in school, for me personally, it would have been tough because I came from the military. Right? Unlike a lot of my peers, I had no prior experience in public health, zero. I was a human resource manager in the military when I came to the School of Public Health, right? And so I was very fortunate to have met leaders like Ritu and, so many others that, I still keep in contact with. And I can truly say that without those leaders, I don't know how I would have made it through the School of Public Health because the lexicon was so different. You know, I spoke military. I used to joke, I speak military. I don't speak public health. And, you know, but they were able to help me get through the classes and understand where I need to be and how to study and prepare for exams. Because the military is a whole different animal. Coming over to public health and kind of having focus on you know, the schoolwork. I mean, Ritu brought it up without leaders like themselves. I don't know how I would have graduated. So as always.
Well, and I think there's that perseverance and that intentionality as well, and just that adaptability. Ritu, what you were sharing before about like needing to readjust to a new campus, and a lot of our students, as they've been going through the pandemic and going to online schooling and this hybrid and kind of as we're re-entering sort of like in person, how that mix goes. And Nayan, I really appreciate just you and Ritu and both of you being here represented on this panel just as classmates and as colleagues too, and those connections and how important it is to build that team together. That this CUNY SPH journey is not a solo journey, it's a community journey, whether in person or virtual, and that includes your CUNY SPH professors, along with all of the centers and institutes, and also staff administrators like myself, as well as your classmates. So definitely encourage all of you to connect with the alumni here on this panel, as well as your fellow classmates and professors. And so our panelists have already left us with a lot of great information, and there's still more to come. And so for those who have submitted questions for our panelists when you registered, we've collected those questions, and our panelists will get a chance to answer a few of those here tonight. One of them that came in through the audience is, what are a few of the skills you gained from your MPH that you're using today in your workplace? Anyone can jump in. Any one of our panelists can jump in.
I'll go first. One class I took was an elective class for mapping, for GIS mapping. I've always liked maps, but making them is a different story. So struggled really hard with that class, but made it through. And I actually was able to bring that skill on my resume and used it to get actually this job that I'm currently in. I was able to impress my interviewers with my mapping skills, and they were looking for that skill because no one on their team had it. And I was able to bring that to the table. And I'm not saying that's what got me in, but could have been something.
Yeah, definitely including those course projects onto the resume, or being able to speak about that and how that knowledge applies in the field. Yeah, it's so important. Anyone else of our panelists about the skills that you gained from your MPH degree that you're using to get today in your workplace?
I can jump in. I actually am focused in my answer on the MPH core courses. The overview of and the foundations of public health have actually enabled me to take on a special role in my department, where I liaise with the Department of Population Health at our School of Medicine. So because I have the foundation in public health and the interest in and experience in policy, I'm able to work more closely with researchers and scientists in the field of public health and understand what their research actually means to some extent, of course, having had the core and foundation courses. So I think I was really eager when I started the degree program to get to the policy courses, but it turns out that the program and the foundation has been very essential to my career development as well.
I can jump into. I think I can build off Ritu's a little bit. I found a number of things directly applicable to what I ended up doing and moving into my current policy research job, but one of them was definitely, I think for two of my electives, maybe during one of the random summers when I decided to add a couple of, I can't remember what they were called, but they were like half classes. And I did sort of two different stat coding languages. I think one was R, one was SAS. At the time, I had very little base in either. I was doing a little bit at the Department of Health, but like very on the periphery. But those absolutely ended up being things I ended up talking about in my interviews. I don't want to say I stretched them, but I definitely like accentuated them probably to a degree in which they weren't at the time. But I had the the baseline experience, and people were interested in that. And same with some of the core classes, particularly econ. I think we ended up writing a policy paper for econ that I spent a lot of time with, and it seemed like a ton at the time, given that I was kind of juggling jobs and stuff. But that ended up honestly being one of my main writing samples for when I ended up going the policy research route. So even though at the time I didn't know I was going to end up in a policy research role, some of those classes and some of the products from the classes ended up sort of being tools in my resume that I didn't have beforehand. So it was just a good reminder that sort of stuff you're doing in class is just directly applicable, not just sort of conceptually to what you're going to be doing, but sometimes can actually be sort of tangible materials that end up being assets for you down the road.
I'm gonna jump in real quick. So I think for me, a couple of things stand out. So data analysis. My first semester, I was asked to take biostatistics, and as I moved back into Homeland Security, a lot of the projects that we work on, major projects, some 500 million or more. So a lot of the decisions that are made with data management. So be able to take that class and understand statistics and be able to present information. I think that one really helped me a lot as I transitioned back to the military and back to Homeland Security, and just kind of the research methods, understanding how to do research and present your findings, I think was very big for me because I was able to kind of simplify that and present information to senior leaders, some at the legislative level today to make informed decisions. So those are two things that stand out to me the most.
Thank you for sharing about all of the core course, and whether they be the overview and just so that this functional foundational knowledge, but also these elective classes, whether it be GIS mapping or data analysis in R and SAS, and how some of the products that come from this coursework are actually part of the portfolio that can go on the resume and can definitely be interview speaking points. Really important for as students are continuing in their classes and gaining this knowledge and applying it. Could you also share about some of the challenges you may have faced as a grad student and how you overcame any of those challenges?
I'll start with this. So for me, when I came to the School of Public Health, the Army gave me 2 years to complete my degree. So I was asked to take 4 classes at the School of Public Health and also take ROTC. So I was a full-time student taking 5 classes each semester. I had a family. I had a family of 3 young kids at the time. And so for me, the biggest challenge I had was finding time to study and do the coursework and meeting all the requirements for the schoolhouse, and also still also meeting the military requirements. So, over that time, I struggled a lot because it always felt like it wasn't enough time in a day to meet the school requirement, also meet at home. So I think having a group like Ritu and peers like, we had was big enough to help me manage my schoolwork.
I remember a time Nyan talks a lot about his time management. We had some really big paper for a class. I can't remember which one it was, but he went home the next day, comes into class and has a draft of the full paper, 10 pages long. He's like, oh, I sat on my couch, just completely wrote the entire thing out. It was ready to go before anyone even started an outline. Like, he was probably one of the best at time management. It was all just because he had so much going on. Otherwise, he had to.
Sometimes the scarcity of that will push people to like, it's like when you got more going on.
I think on the other hand, for me, I've already referenced this a little bit about quitting my job and applying to all these opportunities, but in the end, I did feel like I split myself in too many directions, and that I wasn't able to give, I wasn't seeing of myself what I expected of myself in each of those scenarios. So even though I tell a great story about how it worked out, I also, one of my big takeaways at the end was stop overcommitting to things. Stop, yes, you're excited about the world and passionate to change things and help people, but try to choose some things and really invest in them. And I think that was a hard lesson to learn. I'm not sure it's a challenge I overcame, but by the end of the degree, I got the degree, and I figured out, that that's how I wanted to live my life moving forward, was to focus more and not say yes to everything.
Well, I think that is the overcoming it, right? Like sort of, in a way, how can one know what one is capable of until we've hit that point, like that we have stress, and like, how do you ride the precipice without falling over? And I think, having community that is what kind of like keeps us on that, like to be that feedback, having that feedback from people around you and people close to you, to speak into that, but to keep trying things too, to keep experimenting. Like, what are those calculated risks that you kind of took when you quit your job for field work? So thank you for sharing that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can identify a lot with what Hannah just said. I definitely sort of similarly split myself pretty thin across 2 or 3 different, jobs and internships in school. And then I sort of took the second half to do I took my full-time job during school and finished the last year doing that, and that had its own challenges. So I think it's like on the one hand, there's so many opportunities at the school, and so you should take advantage of them all. You should find them all out. But I definitely identify with, looking back on it, like, could I have just done one thing instead of 2? Probably. And I could have kind of, identified earlier kind of where my real interests were, and that became clear over time. But I think that was the challenge, I think. But similarly, I think to Ritu and Nayan, I had, particularly through other students who were doing the DOHMH internship, I think I found a lot of community and people who were similarly challenging their kind of time management. And I think that sort of being in community was a big help to that, and kind of, getting through the rougher patches. And at the end of the day, I don't, regret trying to do it all. But it was just a good reminder that along the way, you do need to kind of check in with yourself. And to the extent that you do figure out where you can consolidate, once you've kind of figured out which direction you want to be heading, I think that's healthy too.
Yeah, and that exploration is kind of like you do kind of sort of need at some point need to cast that net wide, but also when to like rein it in so that you can be focused and targeted in that way, and that checking in. And I mean, I think these days even more than ever, kind of that whole idea of being good to oneself, taking care of oneself, and that personal mental health, like nobody else can take care of ourselves other than ourselves. And so, yeah, having that awareness of what's going on in life, but also awareness of what the opportunities are and whether or not it's the right time to capitalize on them, or if there will be other times. But yeah, checking in across the board. Thank you for sharing about that. I'm sure that resonates with a lot of the students. And another thing that I heard mentioned was sort of this idea around building community, but also like networking. And curious, what have you found are some of the best ways someone entering the field of public health can start with this networking? What are some anecdotes or stories that you have around networking from your own experience?
I can start this one. I probably a few different things. One, for me at least, yeah, I would just encourage you to take all the advantage of meeting with your professors and office hours. And I can't tell you how many my current job came basically through that. A number of other people I know had similar experiences, and even if it wasn't, someone directly through that, it was someone they knew that they could connect you with. I don't consider myself the most outgoing person, and it wasn't that easy to show up all the time at office hours. But whatever level of awkwardness was totally worth it by sort of from the receptivity of the professors and like their willingness to kind of open their Rolodex of people and ideas and experiences that they have had. So from like a school aspect, I think that was a huge thing. From a professional aspect, I think it's been hard during COVID. But I think, to the extent that you can attend conferences, convenings, we're pretty privileged in New York to have a lot of that going on here. There's a lot of local convenings and local agency coalitions and stakeholder groups and panels like this all the time, whereas in other cities I think you'd be hard pressed to find things that you could go to like that. I also felt like I was able to take advantage of that a lot more living in New York City than I probably would have been able to elsewhere.
I think speaking of amazing opportunities in New York City, if you can do the New York City DOHMH internship, you absolutely should. It's a well-structured program. Reputationally, it's an incredible experience. And one of the things I remember appreciating about that program the most was these sessions that they held for the interns, where you would hear from other parts of the health department that maybe you weren't working in, and learning so much about the incredible work happening. It was it made me feel very proud to live in New York City and to work in New York City and to work in public health. And not to mention on days that I could, walk over to my friends from schools desks and ask how they were doing and what they were up to working on their projects. It was a great place to do an internship, and then also to have your CUNY colleagues alongside with you there.
Yeah, I was going to say the exact same thing. The name of the program is HRTP.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was a really great experience. For me, I had done my MPH right after college, so I didn't really have like real world working experience. And that was kind of my first opportunity to really network with people that are in the the department, and like what they would see what they were doing, how they were using their degrees. I had a mentor. She told me that, maybe after a couple of years after your MPH and after your work, maybe you want to also think about moving up. And for that, if you need even higher qualifications like a doctorate degree, where to go for that, how to get started with that. So being here at the DOH as an intern was very, very helpful, and just opened my eyes to a lot of opportunities that I might not have gotten if I was just doing like Google searches, I guess. Yeah.
One of the things I've found useful is LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a great place to network, right? So one of the things I've done over the last couple of years is I've just sent random messages to folks who have an MPH degree, because I've never used my degree in a professional setting. I graduated, I went back to the military. So for me, just to be able to speak with these individuals who are in the field to say, hey, I have the degree, I'm not working in the field of public health. However, can we communicate on what you're working on and continue to just refine those skills that I learned, in 2017. I think that has been one of the most useful ways for me, and found some of those organizations. The American Journal of Public Health, they often publish articles, kind of reading on those articles, connecting with some of those leaders from those organizations. So if you have not been using LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is a great place. People are very welcoming. You'll be surprised how a random email, hey, my name is Nayan, I'm just this random guy that has a master's of public health. Teach me, great wizard, and they'll give you as much as you need. So that's one way I find to be useful.
Yeah, definitely LinkedIn as a tool to connect with people, or just even to look to see what their career trajectories have been like and learn from that. And yeah, taking that courage and that initiative to ask a question and to connect. And I've also dropped into the chat the New York City HRTP internship program information, which we host info sessions every single semester. And while the summer internship program deadline has just passed, this is an internship program that runs year round. There's fall semester as well as spring and summer. And so definitely as you're planning for field work opportunities, check out that Google Drive with that information. Come and ask our office questions. And we've got some great alum here that work there that can share some insights as well. I'll continue asking our panelists questions from the listing that came through, but if there are any that are coming up fresh for you right now, feel free to raise your hand or type your question into the chat. We'd be happy to address that to our panelists. Another question that came in from the audience was, did you know what you wanted to do with your degree once you graduated or even before? And have you been navigating that?
I'll jump in. I thought I knew. I thought I knew what policy was. I thought I had done community health education work in like a rural setting and an urban setting and not in New York City. And I thought, you know, I want to work on the big stuff. I want to think of all this stuff, but scale up. And I came into the program thinking I wanted to do food policy or asthma policy or something. I didn't know, but I was going to do policy. And it turned out I had a lot to learn about policy, which is great. It was a good program for that. And I also, you know, learned that there was a lot. Policy is a huge word, and there are so many ways in which you can influence policy and be an advocate, regardless of whether you have the health policy and management tag. If you are an expert in your field, you have the opportunity to influence policy. And I'm using the word expert fairly broadly here, not just people who have you know, doctoral degrees and are, you know, many years older than me. But I think that, you know, there are so many opportunities, whether it's within the institution that you're working in and influencing practices up to, you know, the kind of stuff that I do that's looking at legislative and there are many other definitions, but advocacy is, I think, an area that there's still a lot of growth for me in. I'm excited to do what I do now, but I don't think this is the last thing I'll do in my career. And so I think that, yeah, no, I didn't know coming in, and no, I didn't know even when I was leaving, and I probably still don't know. So there's more you can do, I think, considering your whole career as a continuing learning opportunity can be a way to, it takes some of the pressure off. If you're like, oh, I have to decide, I have to know, then sometimes you don't. And sometimes it closes you to opportunities that could, you know, lead to great things that you didn't even plan for. But that's me, who I apparently am all over the place. But I'm curious to hear from other panelists if you had more of a plan and you knew.
I certainly, so when I came to School of Public Health, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I was going to come there, get my degree, go back to the military, create these wonderful programs about mental health. And unfortunately, when I got there, you know, COVID was a thing, and that just kind of threw everything out of order. And I spent the next 2 years trying to develop this program. You know, Let's Chat Mental Health was the name of the program. But you know, no matter how much work I put into it, I had other focus that was just pushing me away from public health. And you know, the military wants you to do one thing, and then, you know, school-wise, I wanted to do mental health. So I thought I had this grand plan, and I knew exactly how I was going to get at it. And however, once I got back to active duty, that changed. And even today, I still have a desire to, you know, create these policies on mental health. But at Homeland Security, you know, I'm looking at, you know, radiation and nuclear technologies. So my focus has kind of been shifted, although my heart says public health. I'm still close to it, and I still have this grand plan what I want to do in public health. But the service to the country keeps kind of pushing me away from it, although I try to go as close back to it. So entered with a grand plan of what I want to do. Years later, I've still yet to accomplish that plan, but one day soon, I'll actually get there.
I can go next. Yeah, I came in with actually I came in pretty open-ended. I think halfway through, especially spending time at the DOHMH, which I had a really great experience with that, even though it was in epidemiology, which wasn't really my track. I just, for the reasons some of the other people articulated, I loved kind of just seeing the whole agency and how it worked. And coming out, I think I really wanted a job there and kind of something more in the legislative or policy side. Interviewed, didn't get it, was super bummed. Ended up kind of having this opportunity come, which, like a nonprofit foundation, was very different than I think I kind of imagined initially. And I think probably I'll end up going probably back at some point towards more of like the local state, policy realm. But, I think it's very much, I think I've benefited from not thinking about it as being linear, and the experiences along the way as being okay. And so I've gotten a ton out of my current position that will directly kind of build to kind of wherever I want to go in the future. But I think probably I came in thinking it was going to be a straight path. And I think kind of one of sort of the real joys of the program was kind of bouncing around a little bit and seeing it doesn't have to be. And even when you land in a spot for 3 or 4 years, seeing that kind of that can lead to something else. So just keeping a bit of an open mind, I think, has been helpful. And there are, again, living in New York, I think we're pretty blessed with a lot of places and opportunities that we're going to see. And so it's definitely nice to kind of have all of that kind of local also.
Ritu, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
I think that when I first started at the DOH, it was pre-COVID, and my organization as a whole just looked a little different. Granted, the last couple of years we've had quite a few changes in terms of day-to-day workload and overall goals and policies. And I think the best lesson from the last couple of years is just going with the flow, seeing how where things land, and being able to adapt to whatever situation that you're in. Like for my program, for example, we've had a bunch of different changes internally, and having to just keep going, make sure that you're able to stay true to yourself, but also be able to work with what you have and make the best of what you have.
Thank you all for sharing about kind of this idea of, so important to be adaptable, especially in the world these days. And like that it's with all that's going on, it's sort of like these linear paths. Like one might think that there might be this plan, but life may shift, the world may shift, and how to be adaptable and having that open-ended curiosity. And like to what you were saying, Hannah, about policy being so broad, it's kind of like, it's like everybody has the problem of like, we don't know what we don't know, but it seems like sometimes the more that we learn, it's like the more that we don't, feels like we don't know, and just to keep chipping away at it and following that curiosity. This is great. We have a couple of questions in the chat, as well as a hand that's raised, and I'm just going to start with Chanya's question in the chat, and then Jada, and then Elisa, then you can speak up after the third one in. So Chanya's question is for the panelists: in your experience, what is the value of having an MPH over, say, an MPA or MPP? And do you think students can get similar experiences no matter what degree we have?
That's a really interesting question. I've worked with MPAs in my office. I think yes, I think you can get a variety of experiences with different degrees. I do think that the MPH tells people that you have a certain skill set and a certain mindset, as well as some core knowledge. I don't necessarily know that other degrees that you named do give that information and like do translate to like, oh, okay, I know that this person knows these things then. That may be true, but in my experience with the MPH and in the field of public health, if you have an MPH, then people know, okay, this person has had this foundational experience. And that's been positive for me.
Yeah, I've found it to be a really versatile graduate degree. And just speaking to my kind of current position in policy research, whether it's like a think tank, which is kind of what I'm at, or smaller kind of organizations that have policy arms. I think any of those probably translate fairly well. It's probably a little different than if you were going to like a health system or something. And I'm trying to think of my colleagues that do research with me. There's definitely some MPPs. I think there's probably one MPA. So in that realm, I think definitely those are probably pretty interchangeable. I will say that when I look, for my own, like when I take a look at jobs or things I'm interested in, and if they are more on the service provider side, or sometimes even like the policy or legislative arm of like a DOH, I tend to see public health come up more often as sort of the degree they're looking for. That's not to say that the others are precluded, but that probably gets back to Hannah's point, which is that like it kind of has a little bit of a statement to it if it aligns with the organization that you're looking at sometimes.
Rita, I'd be interested to see if you have any, like, as you've been in your role in hiring, and like what's been your experience with the variety of different degrees.
I can speak for, I guess, the DOH specifically. I know that there's certain job titles that they're looking for certain degrees, and it'll say on there, like, we're looking for someone that has a background in public health, or like a master's in public health. And although like there's a lot of different titles. So for example, my title is CRS, City Research Scientist. So there's other titles, so a public health advisor. I think there's a few, Hannah, community coordinator. I think there's like a bunch of different titles. So you don't have to have an MPH to work for the DOH. You can have other backgrounds. Someone on my team, he also has MPA, and we work pretty much on the same stuff. So it just depends on I think the skill set, what you have to bring to the table in addition to the degree, any of the hard skills that you can show. So
thank you for that. We have another question in the chat from Jada, who was curious, how soon after obtaining your MPH were you able to secure your current position or your first position?
I guess I can start there. So for me, again, I had a kind of different path, right? I was already on active duty military. So once I completed my degree at the School of Public Health, I went right back into the military. Now, I left the military in 2020, and it took me, gosh, maybe 3 months to get to Homeland Security. Ritu and I were talking recently. I think the biggest issue we have at Homeland Security is the onboarding process, right? Because we work a lot with the CDC. We have our own public health department at the Homeland Security. And oftentimes the biggest barrier we see to hiring new folks is trying to get them cleared to start working. So roughly 3 to 6 months is what it will take if you're wanting to work at the Department of Homeland Security with your master's in public health.
I go next. I was an odd case. I think I got pretty lucky. I happened to find and receive my current job offer during the middle of my program, and so it was really a question of, do you want to kind of do both school and work full time? So I think a number of my classmates, I feel like probably I don't know, some had jobs probably coming right out of school, or they were in a current job while they were doing school, and then they had a kind of a transition set up. And other people probably, I don't know, 6 to 12 months. So it was a variety, and I think kind of reflective of the CUNY program, which is pretty flexible. So some people were, doing full-time stuff already. Some people were doing internships. So it's kind of a pretty wide variety of how people entered the program, what their expectations were. So I don't, I think that just kind of speaks to the program is pretty conducive to like a lot of different sort of setups for entering and leaving.
I think before my current role, I was working at a substance abuse rehab facility in Harlem, near the campus actually. So that I had started like a month or two after graduating. And then once, because it was a grant funded program, once that completed, then I started at DOH, my current role.
Go ahead, Hannah. Did you want to?
Okay, sorry. I didn't know if you had wanted to get to other questions also. I think my perspective was that I did get an offer to come on full time at the health department while I was still finishing the degree, like right after I did the HRTP program, there was an opening and I wasn't quite ready to commit. This is a trend with me. So I didn't accept it at the time, although it was an interesting decision to make. And within some time there was an opening at another place where I'd done an internship, which is where I work now and where I really wanted to be because of the policy work and the wide range of issues that I get to work on for a whole health system. And sorry for the background noise.
Yeah, and it sounds like from our panelists, it's just like there is a wide range of like and flexibility and in terms of what that all looks like. Elisa would invite you to ask your question. Go ahead. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all for sharing. Can everyone hear me? Perfect. So my question, I have a few, but I'll start with the most broad one. My question is, how did your jobs add on to your hard skill sets beyond what you learned in the classroom initially in your MPH? And did you find that the jobs that you got afterwards helped you learn additional skills? Or I think my question stems from like, okay, we can learn so much in one semester, but then once we get to the job, can we learn more there? And are they willing to teach you? And that question's for anyone. I know Jesse had said you had skills in R, and you discussed that in your interview, but did you learn more when you got your initial job?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I have learned pretty much like from a faucet from the moment I started the job. I think I was probably entering with like the bare minimum skills. I do a lot of data analysis, so I had some experience with data analysis, both from DOHMH research internship and from classes like I was talking about. It's significantly advanced from there. I do a lot of my analytics and studies myself. We don't use either of the programs I learned at CUNY. We use Stata, so that was relearning from scratch. So yeah, there was a lot of willingness to teach and learn, and expectation to at the job. Same from like a writing perspective. I thought of myself as a good writer and really spent my first 2 years like understanding like how to write to these different policy audiences and kind of what level of depth and clarity you need. So yeah, I think I've been lucky enough that my job is definitely going to continue my learning curve at a pretty high rate. But at the same time, like I didn't feel like I was entering like from a deficit, like that was the expectation, because like those were the type of skills you were going to learn in the job, and not necessarily that I was like behind and just trying to catch up.
Yeah, I think for me, I had like the basis like of what skills I wanted to learn. So for example, I mentioned before mapping, just general Excel, starting out with that as a base and then growing that skill in your workplace, depending on the work that you're doing. And from there, then you can also see what new can you learn. So it's not that you're just building up on what you already know, but also just anything new that your team needs and just working with that moving forward.
I learned a lot on the job, just like, you know, other folks have said. I think that one of the ways, I feel like you specifically said hard skills though, and I do feel like one of the ways that I've looked to potentially gain more hard skills, I have looked at certificate programs or other courses that I can take, you know, even after graduation, either from CUNY or other schools, just to gain that exposure to things that maybe I didn't have time to, I didn't see the need to during my degree program. And I think that's kind of relates also to the answer to my last question of just like, this is an ongoing journey. I'm always learning. I'm always working to build my career. So it's not too late at any point to gain more hard skills, because those programs that offer, you know, here's a course or here's a certificate program, they're out there.
Great, I appreciate that. Thank you.
That's great. And we have a question also from Victoria. Victoria, the floor is yours.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I just want to start off with that. I am graduating this semester, and all of your sharing your experiences is really reassuring. So I do appreciate that. I had one quick question. So I've been debating on taking the CPH exam, the Certified Public Health exam, and I wanted to know, coming from an HPAM background, how useful you have found that, whether you've spoken to colleagues that have completed that exam, or if you yourself have completed that exam, if it has helped you obtain or grow in your positions. Thank you.
I haven't taken it. I don't know if anyone else has.
I haven't taken it, but I also think that with the increase in the number of folks who are getting MPHs, that the exam may be something that starts to become a standard. So I'm
Mainstream, yeah.
Yeah, I'm anticipating that and thinking I better go ahead and figure out how to work that in so that, you know, I've got it. If all the other people have it, I need to have it too.
I hadn't taken it, but a lot of my peers and mentors that I've spoken with on about LinkedIn, they haven't taken it as well. So I don't know if it's ever going to be a requirement to get to the position that you want to get to. But yeah,
Yeah, I haven't taken it either. Probably mainly a byproduct of my current job, and there's such a range of degrees in my current job that I think it's probably just something that's not expected.
And I just dropped into the chat also for those that are considering taking the CPH exam, CUNY SPH does provide some support to students and alum who are considering it. And we'll also have an event with an info session with CPH if there are any further questions. And that the registration for that is on our events page. So yeah, I think like Hannah, to what you were saying, kind of like things that wondering what that trend will look like, right? As with this certification coming up, if that'll be an industry standard, and how that'll turn out. Thank you, Victoria, for that question. I'll also move on to other questions in the chat that we have from Mariana, and that asked about, noticed mostly folks went into the public or NGO route, and wanted to see if any of your classmates had gone the private route or work at tech startups, and if you can share any of those experiences of classmates that you might keep in touch with.
So I think I answered that question, and I'll circle back there. So we had one guy, Tenzin. He, me too, and he was part of our little group there at he went the startup route in California, but the last time we spoke, I think he came back over to the public organization, so he's no longer in the tech world. I think that's the last conversation we had. That's the only person I know of.
So I kind of came from the private side, so mine was a little different. And I'm trying to think, when I was at like a private system like Sloan Kettering, there were a number of people doing MPHs there on the side. I think most of them were planning to stay there. So that, there was lots of MPHs all over MSK, and that included even people who were working in finance or other areas that you wouldn't necessarily need it or expect it. And then from school, yeah, I think they actually did their MPA at NYU, but we were in the DOH internship together. She was doing, I think she did kind of a stats and epidemiology heavy MPA or MPA, and then she actually ended up going to do like medical economics analysis for an insurance company. So definitely I've seen it, and some of my current colleagues who work at nonprofit research, some of them have previously been at health systems or startup companies, tech companies, provider platform companies. So yes, I definitely see the degrees all around, and I think it definitely translates well to those areas too.
We have another question in the chat from Xavier about if any of you have considered going back to school for a second master's, such as an MHA or a doctorate, and why. And we actually do have a PhD candidate on our panel as well. So yeah, any further schooling beyond the MPH?
Well, I am in my second year of the doctorate program at Liberty University. And the reason why I went back to school is because, again, when I graduated in 2017, I kind of went a different route. I went the military route. So I didn't apply myself in the field of public health. Today, as I want to get back into the field, a lot of the career opportunities that I'm looking at, they want either certain years of experience in public health or a doctorate degree. And so I thought it was best to go back to school, obtain my doctorate, spend the summers now doing my internships to make myself a more well-rounded candidate going forward.
I've definitely thought about it. Can't make myself do it thus far. It's hard to think about. I have a lot of respect for Nyan. It's hard to think about another 4 or 5 years. There's definitely, if you're interested in the space that I currently am, which is kind of nonprofit research foundation think tank type work, for better or worse, PhD in health policy has a lot of weight, and there are definitely like roles within it that I don't think I could get right now without that PhD. So I guess we'll figure out if I'm fine with that or not, but as of now I am. But it is, I don't think that's true of everywhere, but for whatever reason, I think kind of the health policy kind of higher level research space values the PhD pretty highly.
I've also thought about it, but I have resisted for my own better self, that idea of focusing that I said. When finishing my MPH, I've asked myself, well, would getting another degree give me the same thing that I'm after if I just stay in the job and do the time and make connections with sort of digging in deeper where I am instead of spreading myself out again. So I think it could be in my future still. I'm going to let it be in the future and just be where I am right now, which is still pretty early career. And let it be on the shelf.
Yeah, I think everyone's been pointing out a little bit of what's maybe on their schedules, but one thing to also look at is the different types of degrees, specifically for public health. Jesse mentioned PhD. There's also a DPH or a DRPH. So there's a lot of different ways you can go about.
Yeah, and whether I think there was another question about for Nayan, is your doctorate program fully funded? I guess that's another consideration too, as thinking about going back to school, the time as well as the financial investment.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I know a lot of organizations will pay for the program if you stay there a set number of years. My organization, however, they provide a $5,000 annual stipend for your education, so it's not fully funded. So I am using student loans and the $5,000 as well to fund the program. But Liberty University, if you're a veteran, they have a wonderful program. The one course, it only cost me $900 a course for my doctorate degree. And that's, I mean, part of it is just because I'm a veteran in the military. So that has allowed me to kind of cut costs in terms of a doctorate degree. So if you're a veteran on this, this chat and you're looking for a school to save some money, Liberty University may be one of the schools. Yeah, that's just the way I went. But my program is not fully funded. It's costly. I know that's one of the biggest barriers for a lot of students wanting to get their doctorate degrees. How am I going to fund it? But I know there are organizations that do fund a doctorate in public health, and therefore, but no, I'm paying it out of pocket for it.
Yeah, and a lot of this idea about kind of like that why of getting that going back for further schooling, like what are the positions and the roles that one is interested in as in taking on that additional like investment of yourself and in time and finances. We have time for one more question, and Kat has been waiting very patiently. I'll give you the floor.
Hi, thank you. Just want to thank everyone for their time tonight and for sharing. I actually have two questions, and they're piggybacking off of Elisa's and Victoria's. Since we talked about how public health is often really broad and sometimes very unpredictable, and how everybody's expected to have a certain level of professional hard skills, I was just wondering if anybody has any extracurricular or hobbies that you picked up along the way that benefited you for your public health career. Could be any soft skills or anything else. And my second question is, for professional certificates, is there any that you would recommend? Is there like a list that we can look at? Because personally, I have a background in statistics, and I've been looking at exams that might be beneficial, and the most accredited ones are actually for actuaries, but I was wondering how transferable or relevant that would be for public health. So.
I can start. So maybe I'll start with the second one first. My experience has been, whether it's certifications or other things, I actually had, when I was doing more life sciences things before I went into the public health track, I went and did a CFA, which is like a certified financial analyst, which is a lot of stats and econ and too much. But even though I didn't end up going that route, and at the time I had been working with like younger biotech companies, and they worked with the investment community, and that was why I did it. even though that was what it was for, I have found it that it has translated really well. It definitely played a part in the role I got at Sloan Kettering. It just showed them, I think, that I had like a base of stats and math. And I definitely think it helped my current policy research position because it's pretty analytics heavy. And even though I hadn't sort of done policy research analytics, I could point to it and say, like, I have this base skill set. What I'm really talking about is transferring skills that I have into a different sort of area. So I have found at least that you can sort of spin that on your resume to and leverage it. I don't know that I have a great answer to the things I picked up along the way in grad school. I think it was more just a combination of the different internships and kind of being in different settings and meeting different people, and kind of a combination of expanding my connections and then also just kind of expanding the sort of the spaces that I felt comfortable in and conversing in.
Thank you.
I can say one thing. Hi, Kat.
Hi.
So I think one thing that, I guess, in terms of soft skills, one thing I found myself doing a lot outside of school was looking at like current events and news and looking at it through a public health lens and seeing how any kind of event that's happening in real life, how it's presented in the news, how does it affect people in terms of public health, and if for whatever reason you have to write a paper on it, how would you address problems, how would you look at it from a policy perspective, what policies could be put into place to make sure that this event, good or bad, happens or does not happen again.
Thank you.
Do any of our other panelists want to jump in on that question before we close out? We've had a lot of great questions, both in the chat and from the audience. And we just wanted to as we're coming to the end of the program, we really want to thank all of our panelists for being here with us tonight. And just to close us out, wanted to give each of our panelists some time to share some final thoughts with us.
And I'll start. And so, as I've mentioned before, I've kind of had not the conventional career in public health, right? I came from the military in 2015, wanting to change the narrative around mental health in the military. And when I left when I graduated with my degree, I went back to the military and I experienced some barriers there because, again, senior leaders did not want to speak about mental health because there's a stigma that's attached to it, right? The more we talk about it, the more we uncover. But what I'll share is just stick with that desire to change the world, right? I think there's so much that we can do as public health professionals, and oftentimes you may encounter some roadblocks that may deter you from wanting to push forward. But I think the changes and the impact that we can have on people's lives are truly worth those moments and those no's that you will receive will reoccur.
Thank you, Nolan, for that. Would like to go next?
Bingo. Yeah, final thoughts. I think maybe just to echo something I said earlier, I would just really a couple of things. I would encourage people, one, to get as many experiences and connections as you can. It's such a unique time that you have proximity to a lot of people and organizations and research projects all at once. And to not take it for granted, because once you're gone and you're off on your next job, it definitely will be less proximate to you. And then I think also just, would really encourage people to not think about sort of the next step out of school as linear or as sort of the only thing that can happen, or it's going to set your direction all this one way. My particular background should hopefully tell you that you don't have to pick one path. It's okay for it to be winding. And, the health system is so big and public health is so big that experiences you're going to have, even if it's not the thing that's going to be for 20 years, like it may be the thing that leads you to the thing for 20 years. And so I just really encourage people to kind of take that mentality and sort of embrace sort of the journey as it kind of rolls out.
I think my last thing to share would just be that while you guys are in school, if you are still in school, you don't really know the classes that you're taking, which classes are going to be helpful in the future. One class, I won't say the name, I hated, absolutely hated, but I found myself going back to my notes for that one class for a lot of my work in the office. A lot of public health indicators. And I see Nine smiling. He knows the class. A couple of comments in the chat about econ. Yeah, these topics are really challenging and they're meant to just give a big, broad overview of what public health can be. And it just depends on where you will land and what you're going to use. So make sure you keep good notes.
I don't have anything too unique to add. I second really what everyone said. And I think for me, it's surprising to me how much the classes that I took, little tidbits of them will float to the surface. Even during COVID, I found some notes about Ebola that I had taken, and it was all there. I was like, oh, everything that was going to happen, it was all here to begin with. The frameworks that you learn, even in investigating or learning about certain public health topics, will apply to the future and unknown. So I think, I don't know, pay attention in school. That's not really it, but another thing I did want to add, it's very small. Oh no, 60 seconds left. Was just that the management courses, I was laser focused on policy, but the management courses were also really great. I didn't recognize them as great at the time, but now here I am in a healthcare institution with all this management, and I'm, learning all of it. Now I cut myself off. Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah, for getting that in and kind of be cool while you're in school and take good notes and take these broad experiences and embrace the journey and stay mission focused. Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing your insights, for spending your time with us here tonight, and for encouraging everybody to keep on keeping on. And thank you all for being here as well. So we look forward to being in touch and building this community and staying connected. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.